our capability now is sort of beginners, meaning that we'll be able to turn it over in 24 to 36 hours, which is very quick for satellite imagery. And we're going to be able to turn it over from several different spots. And we have people on the ground, which is something that hasn't been talked about so much, that are giving us places to aim the satellites on a daily basis. So we do have some hope, we have some chance of catching quite a lot. But more important than that is they don't know where those satellites are going to be focused, and we hope, a lot of really bad things happen when the lights are turned off, in particular in the Sudan. And so we're just trying to turn the floodlights on. That's it.
And these are commercial satellites you're talking about. How will you collate the images? How does it physically work?
Well, the good thing is we've got Harvard involved, and we've got very smart men who know exactly what they're looking at and have been doing this, studying this imagery for years and years and years. But our point was doing this as a government, someone doing these, examining these things as a government and keeping it to themselves is, I'm sure, very useful to governments, but governments aren't doing much right now. Governments aren't coming in and to the aid of innocent people right now in this area, and probably couldn't. Quite honestly, we're in the United States. We're probably not going to invade another, Arab Muslim nation in the near future. So the truth is, we thought better to have it be broadcast to everyone, and let people put pressure on it. It also, remember, will give us. We can collect evidence for criminal trials at the ICC. I mean, there's a lot of reasons besides just trying to, turn the spotlights on.
I mean, there are problems, I suppose, once you've got the information. If you look at what happened during Darfur, a lot of the criticism was that the UN was standing by, and similarly in Rwanda as well. I mean, you may have this operation, this costly operation operating, but once you've got the pictures and you've got the eyes in the sky, if you haven't got the United Nations behind saying, right, we will take strong, decisive action.
But understand what that means. The United Nations, a group of individual nations, and usually 15 members of the Security Council, 5 permanent members and 10 rotating members. Those people are the ones who can decide what the mandate should be for protection of the people. They're already UN peacekeepers. They're more than anywhere in the world. It's concentrated in that one country. But their mandate says that unless they are personally attacked, unless they are fired upon, they're not to come to the aid. So the mandate needs to be stronger. You're absolutely right. So our job is, and part of our job is, to try and create more pressure on the Security Council, on the people who veto raising the mandate. And we're not talking about invading, we're not talking about NATO, we're talking about literally if you're standing there and villagers are being shot in front of you, that you stand up and say, don't do that anymore. You get in between them. Now that's something we can try to affect. I've been in those rooms and seen how desperate the UN is to be able to do more.
But is there the will there? I mean, do you sense that there is the will is there with members of the Security Council to actually take decisive?
But that's, again, why you take photos. That's why you try to put the pressure on, because part of that will of those, 2 or 3, and it's really 2 or 3 nations, usually China is always the big player. In general, look, China's getting a lot of oil out of the Sudan. You go there and it's all Chinese oil wells everywhere you look, in the South Sudan. But China's recognized very recently that these countries are going to split apart. And if they don't want it to become Nigeria, where they start blowing up oil wells and taking Chinese hostages, because the South is not going to fight a conventional war if they have to fight a war. They're not going to stand, soldier to soldier and shoot away. It's going to be down and dirty. And so China's come out and said we're going to recognize the South when they secede, when they split off. So there's movement right now, and there's a chance to be able to say in the UN, let's move this mandate from a 6 to a 7.5, meaning simply to protect, a responsibility to protect, and that's something that can be done, and is moving towards that.
Would it be fair to say that almost the best organization to put pressure on Bashir and the government in Khartoum would be the African Union? Mm-hmm. And are you similarly putting pressure on the African Union? Is this Satellite Sentinel project intended to do that as well?
It is intended to do that because, again, there's always, when the African Union comes in, a lot of the conversations are, well, the numbers are they're exaggerated, or this wasn't, the government of Khartoum, these were infighting. It's very hard to say that if you can show imagery that proves otherwise. That you see helicopters lined up on the border. Rebel groups don't have helicopters, and they don't have bombers, and they don't have tanks, and these groups do, and this government does. So our job is to say, okay, now here's some evidence of it. Now, again, this is a tool. This is not supposed to fix it all. This is just another element of multifaceted elements of trying to avoid. Our big argument was this: we're always late, and we always come in and say we didn't know. And had I known, we would have done something about Rwanda or Cambodia, or go down the list. At the very least, you can't say we didn't know ahead of this. And the idea is to try and, rather than triage this after it's happened, it's infinitely cheaper, infinitely cheaper, and infinitely more effective to do it beforehand.
You bring up the government of Sudan, and they are obviously condemning what you're doing. Let me read you this quote. "The action reeks of an ulterior motive that has nothing to do with peace, and Clooney is just the latest face for it. You get the public to jump on a bandwagon through the use of their idols who merely parrot statements that you manufactured to serve your real agenda."
I would say, first of all, and it's an important part of this, to be disliked by a government that's been charged by the International Criminal Court of crimes against humanity and genocide is not necessarily a scarlet letter, if you know what I mean. I don't feel terribly bad about the government of Sudan being upset. I also would say it was an awfully big reaction. You saw how long that piece was, and put on the government's website. And basically they said, why are you watching us? Why aren't you watching Palestine? Or why aren't you watching something else? And that seems an awfully, a tremendous amount of concern if it was just, just some dumb actor, pulling a stunt. I think they're concerned by this, and I think that's a good thing. I think they should be concerned.
Do you think that this model, this tool, could be applied to maybe other hotspots around the world? That we could use modern technology in a way to...
That was our hope. I mean, the thought was, look, let's start really using the technology that, I was always laughing because, I spend, you can Google Earth my house anytime you want and go right down onto it, and, please do. It's not in real time, it'll be 3 months ago or something like that. But it seems like if you could do that to me, then I want them to enjoy the same level of celebrity. I want people who do really evil acts to enjoy the same level of celebrity that I do. It seems fair. They want to be famous, they're famous now. And that's what our job is. And if it works, and if it's helpful at all, in any way at all, if it's helpful, then it's worth doing everywhere, because it's infinitely cheaper than bringing them all into refugee camps and trying to keep them alive.